Congratulations. The word slipped from my lips before I could stop it, before I could catch it and bury it somewhere deep, somewhere below dignity, below pride, below the hollow ache that had taken root in my chest and refused to leave. Across the grand ceremonial hall of the Mooncrest Pack House, the air was thick with incense, with wolf musk, with the sticky sweetness of celebration. Candles trembled along the ancient stone walls, casting long golden shadows across faces bright with joy. Pack members cheered. Goblets were raised. Someone near the back of the hall howled, a sound of pure, uncomplicated happiness. I stood among them, and I burned. At the center of the room, beneath the iron chandelier that had hung in this hall for 200 years, the newly bonded couple stood. Jasper Blackthorn, my former fiancé, my former alpha, the man who had once dragged me into a forest clearing under a full moon and pressed his nose to the curve of my throat and said, with every ounce of authority he possessed, that I smelled like home. Now his arm wrapped around another woman, Helena Voss, his childhood friend, his loyal beta, the woman the Pack Council had always wanted, the woman he had chosen. The hall erupted again as their alpha pressed a kiss to her forehead, slow, deliberate, a declaration pressed into her skin. The moon goddess seal, the final acknowledgement. But while everyone celebrated, Jasper's eyes found mine, over Helena's head, across the crowded candlelit room, through the smoke and the noise and the applause. His golden eyes met mine, and something dangerous moved behind them. Not happiness, not relief. Something older, something unfinished. My wolf stirred in my chest like a match struck against stone. I looked away first, because no matter how many vows he made tonight, no matter how many witnesses pressed their palms to their hearts in honor of his union, my body still remembered him. And judging from the dark tension in his gaze, his instincts hadn't forgotten me either. Before we begin, if you love dark Lycan kings, forbidden mates, and stories that make your heart ache, like comment where you are watching from, and subscribe for epic Lycan king romances, where omegas rise, kings fall, and love is never gentle. The Alpha's Choice. 3 months earlier, the night Jasper rejected me was colder than any winter I had ever known, not because of the temperature. The forest was mild that evening, the kind of autumn night that smelled of pine resin and coming rain, the kind of night that should have felt sacred. It was cold because of him, because of what he said, because of the particular cruelty of watching someone look you in the eye, really look at you, and still choose to walk away. We stood in the forest, clearing where he had first marked me with his scent during a full moon hunt, nearly 2 years before. Back then, he had dragged me laughing through the dark, caught me at the edge of a silver creek, and pressed his forehead to mine. His heart had been pounding. He had been barely controlled, this enormous, terrifying alpha who ran 300 wolves, trembling slightly as he touched my face. "You are mine, Zisha." He had whispered it like a prayer. My future Luna. I had believed him. "I have to choose, Helena," Jasper said quietly. He stood 6 feet away from me, close enough that his scent reached me. Cedar, dark earth, that warm alpha undercurrent that my wolf had been reacting to since the first moment we met. Close enough that I could see the tension in his jaw, far enough to make the words land like a blade. "You don't have to," I said. My voice was steady. I was proud of that. "Yes, I do." His golden eyes hardened, not with coldness, but with that particular kind of resolve that alphas cultivated, the ability to make decisions that hurt and carry them anyway. The Pack Council has spoken. Helena strengthens our alliance with Silver Ridge. Her bloodline, her family's connections. It's a political necessity. The Pack needs this union. And I don't. It wasn't a question. Zisha. No, I cut him off. Soft, firm. Don't say my name like that. Don't make it sound like this is hard for you when you've already decided. His nostrils flared. Even now, even at the moment he was ending everything, his body reacted to my nearness. I could see it in the way his hands tightened at his sides, the way his wolf pressed against his control. It meant nothing. Instinct wasn't loyalty. You know I... Don't, I said again, quieter this time. Whatever you're about to say, don't. Keep it. You'll need the comfort later. The wind shifted, carrying his scent toward me. Dominant, familiar, painfully, unfairly intoxicating. Inside me, my wolf lay down. The way a wounded thing lies down. I forced my voice steady. I forced my spine straight. I forced my chin up and looked at the man who had called me home and was now choosing a different destination. Then congratulations, Alpha Blackthorn. I turned and walked away before he could see the tears burning in my eyes. He didn't call me back. The temptation that remained. Breaking a bond doesn't erase instinct. That was the cruelest truth of our nature. A wolf does not stop knowing its counterpart simply because the human half decides otherwise. The body remembers. The blood remembers. Long after Jasper had stood before the Pack Council and declared Helena his chosen Luna, long after I had pressed my palms flat to the floor of my room and breathed through the particular agony of rejection, my wolf still turned her head every time he entered a room. We lived in the same pack house, same territory, same cursed proximity. He sat at the Alpha's table during communal meals. I sat at the lower table, 3 rows apart. I could still smell him from there. And sometimes, against every effort of my will, I looked. And he was always already looking back. Helena noticed. Of course she did. She was sharp, calculating, and fiercely protective of what she had won. She cornered me one afternoon outside the training grounds, where the pack's younger wolves had just finished sparring. I was wrapping a bruise on my forearm when her shadow fell across mine. "You should consider leaving Mooncrest," she said. Smooth, conversational, the way someone discusses weather. I didn't look up. Should I? It would be easier. For everyone. I finished wrapping my arm and finally looked at her. Helena was beautiful. I had always known that. Dark hair, sharp cheekbones, the kind of composed elegance that came from years of navigating pack politics. She wore her authority the way she wore everything, perfectly fitted. But her eyes were cold. "Why would I leave my pack?" I asked evenly. Her mouth curved, not quite a smile. "Because my mate still watches you." The words landed with precision. She meant them to. I felt my pulse jump once, and controlled it. "That sounds like your problem, Helena." "Not mine." "Careful." Her voice dropped, just slightly, just enough. "Don't mistake my politeness for patience." "I'm not mistaking anything," I said. "I'm still here because this is my home. And I'm still here because I haven't done anything wrong, which is more than I can say for the man you married." Something shifted in her expression. "You think you still have power over him?" "No," I said it honestly. "I think instinct isn't something either of us can switch off. That's biology, not desire. The desire is gone." I was lying about the desire, but she didn't need to know that. She stepped closer. Her scent was cool and controlled, expensive, layered. "You're wrong," she said softly. "About all of it. Because this time, I'm the one he chose. and chosen matters more than wanted." She walked away without waiting for my answer. I stood in the afternoon sun and hated that she was probably right. The night of weakness. Weeks passed. I kept my distance. I changed my routines. I learned the corridors he walked and avoided them. I spoke to him only when pack protocol demanded it, during formal addresses, during the weekly council briefings I attended in my role as a trainer. I was careful. I was disciplined. And then the storm came. It rolled in from the mountains on a Thursday, unusual for the season. The kind of storm that made old wolves uneasy, that sent the younger pack members running inside with their ears pressed flat. By nightfall, the pack house had lost power to the upper floors. The halls went dark, lit only by emergency torches set into iron brackets every 30 feet. I was in my room, reading by candlelight, when the door opened. Not knocked. Opened. Jasper stood in the doorway, soaked from the rain, his dark hair flat against his forehead, his shirt clinging to his shoulders. He looked like something wild that had run in from the storm and hadn't quite returned to civilization yet. His eyes glowed gold in the candlelight. "Why are you here?" I said. My voice came out carefully flat. He didn't answer immediately. He stepped inside, and I stood from my chair because the instinct to put something between us, distance, furniture, anything, was overwhelming. "You shouldn't look at me like that," he said quietly. "Like what?" "Like you're already gone. Like you've already left this place in your head and I'm just—" He stopped. "Like I'm already just a memory." Something tightened in my chest. "You made sure of that." He moved, and it was very fast, the way alphas moved when they're control-frayed. One moment he was across the room, then his hand was around my wrist. Not hard, not holding me in place, just contact. The moment our skin touched, it hit me like a wave, like something submerged, finally breaking surface. My wolf surged upward with a sound that was half cry, half howl. His did the same. I felt it in the way his breath changed, in the sudden tension in his entire frame. Electric, ancient, completely unfair. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The candle flickered. The storm raged outside. Then Jasper exhaled, sharp, shaking, and released my wrist. He pressed his free hand against the wall beside me, not caging, not threatening, like he needed something to hold himself upright. "Damn it, Zisha," his voice cracked at the edges. "Why can't I stop?" I turned my face away. "Because you made a choice that your wolf never agreed to." I heard him breathe. Then he stepped back and left without another word. I stood in the dark for a long time after, listening to the storm, telling myself it meant nothing. The dangerous secret. After that night, everything became unbearable, not in the dramatic way of love stories, not with grand gestures or tearful confessions, in the quiet, grinding way of something that simply cannot continue, like a bone-healed wrong, pressing against the wrong thing with every step. Jasper tried to avoid me. I saw the effort in it, the redirected meetings, the rearranged routes, the way he spoke to everyone in a room except me. His wolf, though, was less obedient than his intentions. I caught him watching from the upper training gallery as I ran the younger wolves through exercises. I caught the way his jaw tightened when another pack member placed a hand on my shoulder. The pack started talking. Whispers move like water in a pack house. They find every crack. Some said the alpha regretted his choice. Some said I was deliberately provoking him. Some said Helena had gone to the pack council to formally request my reassignment to a border outpost. I didn't know which stories were true. I only knew that something had to give. So I made my decision, not rashly, not in grief or anger or the dark heat of that stormy night. I made it quietly, over the course of a week, sitting with it the way you sit with a difficult truth until it stops being sharp and becomes simply real. I would leave Mooncrest, not because Helena wanted me gone, not because I was afraid. I had done nothing wrong, and I refused to carry that particular shame. But because I had realized something in that dark room with my wrist in Jasper's hand, I was still waiting. Deep in some hopeless chamber of my heart, I was still waiting for him to undo it. To walk in one morning and say he'd made a mistake, to choose differently. And as long as I stayed, as long as he was 30 feet away every morning, and I could smell cedar and dark earth in every hallway, I would keep waiting. I refused to spend my life waiting for a man who had already made his choice. The night before I planned to leave, I stood at the pack border under a silver moon. The boundary trees rose around me, enormous old pines marked with pack sigils. I had walked past them 1,000 times. I reached out and pressed my palm to one, feeling the rough bark, the familiar magic woven through the territory. Goodbye, I thought. You're leaving. His voice came from behind me, low and close. I didn't startle. Some part of me had known he would come. Yes, I said. I didn't know. I didn't announce it. A pause. The wind moved through the pines. Why? I finally turned. He stood 10 feet away, his hands loose at his sides, his golden eyes dark with something I didn't have a name for. He looked, for the first time in months, uncertain. Alpha Jasper Blackthorn, who had never flinched in battle, who had held this pack together through drought and rogue attacks and political siege, looked lost. Because you chose your future, I said, and I'm not in it. He moved forward, one step, then stopped. Zisha, don't. I smiled, and somehow it was real. Sad, but real. I'm not running from you, Jasper. I'm running towards something. There's a difference. He stood there under the silver moon, and I walked past him. He didn't reach for me this time. I left before dawn. The Rogue Lands. The Rogue territories began 40 miles east of Mooncrest's borders, a vast stretch of unclaimed land where wolves without packs wandered, traded, and occasionally built small settlements that lasted a season or a century before dissolving back into forest. I had studied them in pack school. I had never actually walked them. They were rougher than I expected. Wilder. Also, unexpectedly, alive. I traveled light, a pack on my back, my wolf close to the surface for warmth and sensing. I kept to the main trade roads where I could, and avoided the deep forest at night. I took work where it was offered, carrying messages between settlements, helping with hunt coordination, training a group of scraggly teenage rogues how to spar without injuring each other. Freedom tasted strange, not unpleasant, just unfamiliar, like food eaten in silence after years of noisy meals. I missed the pack, the weight of belonging. I did not miss the weight of watching him. 3 weeks into my travel, I arrived in a small settlement called Duskfall, a crossroads town of perhaps 200 wolves, officially neutral, unofficially run by a council of 7 old she-wolves who seemed to know everything about everyone. I found lodging at a boarding house and spent 4 days working shifts at the settlement's communal kitchen in exchange for meals. On the 5th day, I made the mistake of taking the Eastern Forest Road after dark. I had done it twice before without incident. The road was well traveled, lit by moon lamps every quarter mile. I was confident in my own ability to handle trouble. I underestimated how much trouble could arrive at once. There were 7 of them. They stepped out of the trees from 3 directions, unhurried, organized, clearly not opportunists. Their leader was tall, scarred across the jaw, with the flat eyes of someone who had done this before and felt nothing about it. Well, He looked me over slowly. A lone Omega, walking alone at night. That's careless. I'm not an Omega, I said. Your scent says otherwise. His grin showed teeth. My wolf surged, a warning growl moving through me. I shifted my weight. 7 against 1 was survivable if I moved first and moved smart, but 3 of them were already flanking me, and the distances were closing. I'd step back, I said carefully. Before you make a decision you regret. The leader laughed. And then the howl split the night. It wasn't like any howl I'd heard before. Not the high pack call of Mooncrest, not the ragged cries of rogues. It was deep, resonant, the sound of absolute command. Like the forest itself had been asked to be quiet and had agreed. The 7 rogues froze. In the silence I heard the leader's breath stutter. Something moved in the shadows to the north, large, fast, impossibly controlled. And then it emerged into the moonlight, and I understood the fear. The wolf was massive, largest I'd ever seen. Silver-gray fur over an enormous frame, moving with the terrible grace of something that had never been challenged and never feared that it might be. Its eyes, even in wolf form, glowed the same color as winter light through ice. Silver. The rogues didn't speak. They simply left. Not ran. Withdrew, the way a tide withdraws, quickly and without dignity. The great wolf stood for a moment in the road, watching them go. Then it turned those silver eyes to me. I held very still. A shift, the beautiful, terrible biology of our kind. And a man stood where the wolf had been. Tall, dark-haired, silver shot at the temples. A face that looked carved from unhurried certainty. Not handsome in the warm way Jasper was handsome, but striking in the way of weather and old stone. He was dressed in plain dark clothing, as if he had simply been out for an evening walk. He studied me for a long moment. Calm, unhurried. You shouldn't travel this road alone at night, he said. Thank you for the advice, I replied, and for the rescue. Something moved through his expression. Amusement, perhaps. I'm Kale. He tilted his head slightly, the way wolves do when they're reading a scent. And you, he said quietly, smell like a woman. Another alpha made the mistake of letting go. The Night Fang clan. Kyle was unlike any alpha I had ever met. Most alphas announced themselves. It was half strategy and half reflex, the constant low-level projection of dominance that kept the hierarchy legible, that told every wolf in a room exactly where they stood. Jasper had it. Every alpha I'd known had it. That invisible pressure that said, there is a top wolf in this space, and it is me. Kyle didn't do that. His authority wasn't something he wore. It was something he simply was. The way mountains are mountains, not trying to be impressive, not performing their height, just existing in a way that made other things feel small in comparison. The most powerful alpha I had ever encountered, and the most quiet. He walked me back to Duskfall that night without asking permission to accompany me, and I found I didn't mind. He told me about the Night Fang clan, a pack of roughly 400 wolves who lived in the high mountain territory, 3 days' travel northeast. Old bloodlines, independent. They answered to no council and had turned down alliance offers from 3 major packs in the last decade alone. Why? I asked. Because alliances are debts. He glanced at me. And I don't like debts. He offered me passage to Night Fang territory without pressure, framing it as a practical solution to my situation. A safe place to stay. Work if I wanted it. No obligation. I spent a day thinking about it. Then I followed him north. The pack welcomed me without hesitation. That was the first thing I noticed. No vetting, no suspicion, No quiet hostility toward the outsider. They were curious, openly, warmly curious, the way a pack that has never felt threatened can afford to be. An older woman named Dava showed me to a room in the Western Lodge and told me meals were communal. Training was at dawn if I wanted it, and no one would bother me if I preferred to be left alone. "And Kyle?" I asked. Her expression was soft. "Our alpha has good instincts. If he brought you here, you belong here." I hadn't belonged somewhere so quickly in a long time. Kyle gave me space. That was the second thing I noticed. No hovering. No testing my loyalty. No political maneuvering. He ran his pack with the confidence of someone who had never needed to convince anyone he was in charge. He sparred with his wolves in the mornings, joining the training grounds not as an observer, but as a participant, taking hits and giving them with the same even expression. He was curious about me. He showed it in small ways, leaving books outside my door, asking about Mooncrest's pack structure with the careful neutrality of someone building a real picture rather than gathering ammunition. Joining me on the evening walks, I took through the mountain meadows. Gradually, I told him things. Not everything. Not the worst of it. But pieces about the rejection, about Helena, about the particular loneliness of loving someone who had decided duty mattered more than you. Kyle listened. Really listened, with the focused stillness that I was coming to understand was simply how he existed in the world. Completely present, never hurried. One evening, perhaps 3 weeks after my arrival, we sat on the stone ridge above the clan's territory as the sun descended behind the far peaks. The sky was burning. Below us, the pack moved through their evening routines, small figures, warm and alive, going about the ordinary beautiful business of community. "Your past still haunts you," he said. Not an accusation, an observation. "Yes," I said. There was no point in pretending otherwise. "It doesn't define you." I looked at him. His silver eyes were already on mine. "An alpha who abandons what he's claimed has poor judgment," he said simply. "That's his flaw to carry, not yours. You don't know the full story." "I know enough." A beat. I know what a wolf looks like when they've been told they don't matter enough, and I know what it looks like when they start to believe it. My chest tightened. "You matter," he said. Quiet. Absolute. The way he said everything. Whatever he told you with his choice, he was wrong. I looked back at the burning sky. My throat was tight. "Why do you care?" I asked. "You barely know me." There was a long, comfortable silence before he answered. "Because," he said quietly, "fate rarely sends someone like you into my territory by accident." The alpha who returned. He arrived on a Tuesday. I was in the eastern sparring yard, working with a group of Nightfang's mid-rank wolves on a particular defensive formation I'd developed during my Mooncrest training days. The mountain air was sharp and clean. I had a bruise forming under my eye from a sparring session an hour earlier, and I was in a good mood. Then one of Kale's sentinels appeared at the yard's entrance. Her expression said everything before she spoke. "There is an alpha at the northern gate," she said. "He won't give his name. He said you'd know his scent." The entire sparring yard went quiet. Everyone looked at me. I took a slow breath. Cedar. Dark earth. That infuriating, unforgettable warmth. Even from this distance, his scent had reached the yard on the mountain wind. I set down my training stave. "Tell Coyle," I said. The confrontation took place at Nightfang's mountain gate, a natural stone passage, where the path narrowed between two enormous boulders, wide enough for 2 horses or one very large alpha wolf. Kyle stood on the Nightfang side, arms crossed, expression calibrated to absolute neutrality. I stood behind him, to his left. Jasper crossed into the passage alone. He looked different. 3 months had left their mark. He was harder around the jaw, slightly hollow beneath the eyes. He had the look of a man who had not been sleeping, which on an alpha was alarming. Alphas healed fast. Whatever was keeping Jasper awake was winning. His golden eyes found me instantly. Shock, relief, something messy and anguished that he didn't fully conceal. Then his gaze moved to Cole, to where I stood in relation to Cole, to what that meant. Something raw moved across his face. Zisha. My name. Just my name. The way he said it hit me in the sternum, but I kept my face still. Alpha Blackthorn, I said. Formal. Even. Cale's voice was pleasant. You're trespassing on Night Fang territory. Jasper's gaze moved to him slowly. The evaluation was mutual. 2 alphas reading each other with the particular precision of their kind. I watched Jasper recalibrate, watched him recognize, with whatever instinct alphas use to measure each other, that Cale was not someone who would move. I came for her, Jasper said. The air went very still. Kyle tilted his head slightly. You came for her. She is. She is, Cale agreed calmly. A guest of this pack, under my protection. What she was to you is a matter of history. What she is now is not yours to claim. Jasper's jaw set. She is my mate. You rejected her. No anger in Cale's voice, just fact, like reading a record. I made a mistake. Yes. Jasper stepped forward. Not toward Kyle, toward me. His eyes were fixed on mine, and for a moment I saw it all. The pride stripped away, the politicking dissolved. Just Jasper Blackthorn standing in a mountain pass looking at me the way he'd looked at me in a forest clearing 2 years ago, before duty had become more important than truth. Step aside, he said to Cale. Quiet. Dangerous. Kyle's eyes went silver. Make me! The 2 words dropped into the mountain air like stones into still water. And both alphas held very, very still. The greatest temptation. The 2 alphas faced each other like storms, deciding whether to collide. I could feel the pressure of it. The aura of 2 apex wolves measuring each other across 10 feet of mountain stone, each radiating the kind of dominance that made the air physically heavy. The Night Fang sentinels on the upper rocks had gone absolutely rigid. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. I was done holding mine. Stop! I stepped forward, and both men turned to me. 2 sets of eyes, one gold, one silver, focused on my face. For a beat, I felt the impossible absurdity of it. The drama, the weight, the sheer excess of being 27 years old and standing in a mountain pass between 2 alpha wolves who both believed, for very different reasons, that they had some claim to my future. There isn't going to be a fight, I said. Cale relaxed immediately, barely perceptible, but I had learned to read his stillness. His silver eyes moved to me with a question he didn't ask. Jasper did not relax. Zisha, listen to me. No, I kept my voice even. You came a long way. You deserve to be heard. So speak. He blinked. He hadn't expected that. Jasper Blackthorn had spent his entire life being the one who determined the terms of conversation, who decided when a discussion happened, when it ended, what was resolved. Having the terms returned to him was unfamiliar territory. Good. He gathered himself. And then, to his credit, to the credit of whatever honesty he'd arrived at in the months since I'd left, he spoke without calculation. No alpha posturing, no careful framing. I was wrong, he said. About Helena, about the council, about duty. I told myself I was making a sacrifice, that a good alpha sacrificed what he wanted for what his pack needed. I believed that. He paused. I didn't count on the fact that my pack would feel my unhappiness more than they'd feel the benefit of any political alliance. I didn't count on Helena knowing immediately that she hadn't won anything, that she'd been given a prize that had already given its heart away. I didn't count on. He stopped, swallowed. I didn't count on how empty the right decision could feel. Silence. Even Kale was very still. "Come home, Zisha," Jasper said. Soft now, stripped of command, just a voice, just a man. I was wrong. I know what I want. I know what I chose, and what it cost, and I am... His voice cracked. I am asking. The word hung in the cold mountain air. My chest was full. I won't pretend it wasn't. Those words, "I'm asking," from Jasper Blackthorne, were the words I had dreamed for 3 months. The apology I had not let myself hope for. And they were real. I could smell it on him, the way wolves can smell the truth of things, the grief, the regret, the genuine fracture. He meant it. He had actually, finally, meant it. And that should have been everything. Except... I looked at Kyle. He stood quietly to my left. He had not moved, had not spoken, had not pressed any claim or made any gesture. His silver eyes were on mine, steady, patient, giving me the same thing he had given me every day for 3 months. Space. Choice. The absolute certainty that whatever I decided, he would not crumble. I thought about the stone ridge above the meadows, the evening he had said, quietly, with no agenda, "You matter." The mornings he had trained alongside his wolves as an equal. The books left outside my door. The nights he had sat with me in comfortable silence and not once asked me to explain why I needed it. I thought about the girl who had stood in a forest clearing and believed a man who called her home, and the woman who had learned, the hard way, that home is not given to you. It is chosen. It is built. It is the place where someone stays. I turned back to Jasper. He was watching me with that terrible open expression. The look of a man who knows he is about to get the answer and is already bracing for it. I smiled. It was real. Not cruel. Not triumphant. Just settled. The smile of someone who has found the ground under their feet again after a long time falling. "Congratulations, Jasper." His expression shifted, uncertain, cautious. "Zisha, you figured it out." I kept my voice gentle. "You learned what mattered. You made the long journey, and you told the truth. That is, genuinely, worth something. I'm glad for you. I am." I could see the moment he understood. It was not a cruelty. The understanding, watching it arrive in his eyes, was not the moment I had imagined when I'd fantasized about this scene in my worst, most human moments. I had imagined satisfaction. I had imagined coldness. I had imagined making him feel what I'd felt. Instead, I felt compassion. A clean, uncluttered compassion for someone who had made a mistake too large to undo and was now living in its aftermath. "That wasn't," his voice was rough. "That wasn't congratulations. That was..." "A goodbye," I said quietly. "An honest one, which is more than I got." A moment. Then I turned, and I slipped my hand into Kyle's. His fingers closed around mine. Warm, unhurried, as if he had simply been waiting for exactly this long as it took. His wolf rumbled, low and resonant, not triumphant, not territorial. Content. I heard Jasper exhale, a long, shaking sound, the sound of something ending. "You're sure?" he said. Not a challenge, Not a question even, just a need to hear it. "Yes," I said. Another silence. Then Jasper Blackthorne, Alpha of Mooncrest, the man who had once called me home, gave a single, slow nod. "He's lucky," he said. He turned and walked back down the mountain path. His shoulders were straight. His step was even. He had come here as an alpha, and he left as one, whatever it cost him. I respected that. I watched until the path curved and the pine trees closed behind him. Then I turned my face into the cold mountain wind and breathed. Kyle's hand tightened around mine once. "All right?" he asked. I looked up at him, at the steady silver eyes, the unhurried certainty. The man who had found me on a dark road, and, without grand gestures or declarations, had simply stayed. "Yes," I said, and this time I meant it completely. That evening, the Nightfang clan gathered in the Great Hall for their weekly communal meal. I sat beside Kyle at the Alpha's table, not because he'd placed me there, but because Dava had simply set my plate there as if it were obvious, and no one had thought to question it. The old she-wolves smiled at me from across the room. The wolves I'd trained that morning made space for me easily, naturally. It didn't feel like belonging in the way Mooncrest had, the loud, complicated belonging of a pack you were born into. It felt like something quieter, something chosen on both sides. After the meal, Kyle walked with me out to the stone ridge, the same one where he had told me I mattered, where the sky burned and the pack moved below like something living. We stood in the dark for a while without speaking. "What are you thinking?" he asked eventually. I considered the question honestly. That I spent a long time defining myself by what someone else chose. I watched the moon rise over the far peaks, enormous, silver, filling the sky. And then I stopped. Kyle turned to look at me, that steady, unhurried attention. "What are you now?" he asked. I thought of the forest clearing where Jasper had first said my name like a prayer. I thought of the cold night he had taken it back. I thought of 7 rogues on a dark road, and a howl like a command, and a mountain clan that left books outside doors and didn't ask a wounded wolf to explain itself. I thought of the girl who had needed someone to call her home, and the woman who had built one. "Free," I said. Kyle smiled, rare, real, like weather breaking. He raised my hand and pressed his lips to my knuckles. Deliberate, unhurried, a declaration pressed into skin. No ceremony, no witnesses, just the mountain and the moon and the quiet, solid fact of a choice made freely by 2 people who had chosen each other in full knowledge of what the other was. Below us, the pack moved through the dark, wolves running, voices calling, the warm, ordinary light of belonging spilling out through the hall windows. And I watched them with my hand in his, and my wolf at peace for the first time in longer than I could remember. Because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't rage, isn't coldness, isn't making someone watch you suffer. The end